Every company needs money to grow and take on the challenges 2023 will bring.
That's why Bank Pacific's commercial loan officers stand ready to help you.
We offer several programs tailored to assist companies to get to the next step or perhaps for a startup,
including working with SBA or GITA.
Now we're banking on the future. Services to choose. Bank Pacific, where others put branches.
Bank Pacific.
We want to be your partner.
Equal opportunity lender. Member FDIC.
Credit conditions apply.
All three stations, all three morning shows. Thanks to all the listeners for Pika's Best, Choice Broadcasting has swept the top three best radio stations. The Point, Boss 104, and Star 101. Top three radio personalities, Kyle Mandapat, Ray Gibson, and Daryl Lizava. Put the power of Pika's Best to work for you. If you're an advertiser, call 671-888-7346 for information, rates, and packages. And let us get your message out to Pika's Best listeners with Pika's Best Broadcasters. And thanks for listening to Pika's Best.
The president planning to do something he's never done before.
President Biden finally announcing he does intend to visit the border for the very first time.
Are you going to be visiting the border when you head down to Mexico?
That's my intention. We're working out the details now.
But it wasn't even 1 month ago when President Biden declined to visit the border while in Arizona, saying at the time there were more important things going on. And now that Biden says he will visit the border, depending on where he goes, he might get a first-hand look at the impact his policies are having down there. If he goes to El Paso, he might see hundreds of migrants sleeping on city streets, as Border Patrol there has been absolutely inundated with record illegal crossings in the city in recent weeks. The city had to declare a state of emergency as a result.
Fox's Bill Maloogian. A shortage of computer chips and other parts contributed to an 8% drop in vehicle sales since 2021. But car dealers say their inventories are slowly returning to normal. That means some of the prices for new cars are coming down slightly. It's 3.5 years in prison for Rick Singer, called the mastermind of the college admissions bribery scandal. It's the longest jail sentence of any of the defendants. The American side of Niagara Falls lit up in Buffalo Bills blue on Wednesday in tribute to safety Damar Hamlin, still critical after that injury in Monday Night Football.
Doctors are seeing some small but encouraging signs of improvement in Damar Hamlin's condition. His uncle says the 24-year-old is now receiving 50% oxygen after initially receiving 100%. Hamlin is still in the ICU, sedated and on a ventilator, and doctors have flipped him onto his stomach to relieve pressure on his lungs. NFL officials said that while Damar Hamlin hasn't played the 3 seasons required to be vested and eligible for benefits like a pension, life insurance, and disability, the league is going to make sure he has everything he needs to live a complete life going forward.
Fox's Garrett Tenney. And I'm Jack Callahan. This is Fox News.
Hafide, this is Josh here at APL. Our expertise and extensive network can help you grow your business and reach out to more global markets. As a responsible carrier, APL is also committed to a sustainable future, whether it's protecting the environment or investing our efforts in giving back to the community. Our dedicated teams in Guam, Saipan, and on U.S. mainland are here to support you. Call 588-4651 or visit www.apo.com.
This holiday season at the Micronesia Mall, shop and redeem receipts totaling $10 or more. Scratch and win for a chance at instant prizes from Burger King or Foot Locker. Or receive a grand prize entry form for our drawing on February 4th for a chance to win a new Lexus UX 250 Hybrid from Atkins Kroll Lexus. 10 lucky runners-up will get $250 gift certificates from Goodwin Travel and Tour for tickets to Philippine Airlines. Shop more, win more this holiday season at the Micronesia Mall. Follow us on Facebook and Instagram for more information. Terms and conditions apply.
Come try Guam's original Chamorro restaurant with Pika's Best 5 years running. Mezcla Chamorro Fusion Bistro. Experience Chef Peter's candied salmon over scallion coconut rice, octopus to naktak, Chamorro platter, and their award-winning gourmet hamburgers. Or if you're looking for something healthy, try their keto-friendly menu. Come and enjoy Mezcla's half-a-day service at their Hagåtña and Grand Plaza Tumon location. Call their Hagåtña location at 479-2652 for reservations.
Welcome to Tall Tales with Bob Klitzkie, the only show on talk radio where common sense is a lot more common. Phone lines are now open at 888-TALK. That's 888-8255. And now, The Point proudly brings you Tall Tales with Senator Bob Klitzkie.
A well-regulated militia being necessary to the security of a free state, the right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. As is my usual custom, I'm always on the lookout for news about the Second Amendment, guns, the ability to keep and bear arms. Today I have an article that ran on, of all places, CNN, and it's reasonably accurate.
Oh boy, they're looking for their audience back.
Yeah, so Ariane DeVogue writes for CNN, Supreme Court asked to step in on New York concealed carry firearm law. New York Attorney General Letitia James asked the Supreme Court on Tuesday to allow a new state law that places restrictions on carrying a concealed firearm to stay in effect while legal challenges play out. The dispute is the first time the court has been asked on an emergency basis to consider a significant Second Amendment case since last summer's ruling that expanded gun rights nationwide. In that case, New York State Rifle versus Bruin, the court struck down New York's prior concealed carry gun law. A 6-3 majority said the law prevented law-abiding citizens with ordinary self-defense needs from exercising their Second Amendment right to keep and bear arms for self-defense. Just days after the opinion, New York Governor Kathy Hochul, a Democrat, convened a special legislative session to pass a law called the Concealed Carry Improvement Act. The new law came under immediate attack as gun owners said it was a direct defiance of the Supreme Court decision and continued to make it too difficult for ordinary citizens to obtain concealed carry permits. Last fall, a district court blocked key provisions of the new law related to requirements that an applicant demonstrate good moral character, provide a list of all former and current social media accounts from the past 3 years, and sensitive place restrictions that include healthcare settings, churches, parks, etc. Kind of like, you have a right to bear arms. You can carry a gun openly or concealed, but we have restrictions as to some places where you can't carry it. For instance, you can't carry that on a public sidewalk or on a public street or in a public park or anywhere you can breathe the same air that the rest of this kind of stuff. In December, a federal appeals court put that decision as were. Last fall, a district court blocked key provisions of the new law related to requirements that applicants demonstrate good moral character, provide a list of former and current social media contacts, and the sensitive place restrictions. In December, however, a federal appeals court put that decision on hold and ordered expedite consideration of the matter with opening briefs due on January 9th. Now, gun owners want the Supreme Court to step in. In an emergency application filed December 21, a lawyer for the gun owners asked the justices to step in, and he defended the district court opinion. He said it was carefully designed to limit New York's enforcement of a sweeping gun control statute and enacted in retaliation against New York gun owners for having prevailed in the Bruin case. We'll show you guys. And I suspect that they looked at Christ versus McNinch for their playbook. The lawyer, Stephen Stamboulay, said that the 184-page decision opinion was meticulously tailored to uphold the right of New Yorkers to keep and bear arms. Okay, now to the Supreme Court. The justices are not considering the merits of the case, only whether to lift the appeal order pending appeal. Now, I've talked about this before, and this is what is referred to as the Supreme Court's shadow docket. Now, people get into the habit of saying, well, the Supreme Court ruled that. Well, in order for the Supreme Court to rule on a particular question, it works like this. One of the parties from a case below from one of the circuit courts files a paper called a petition for writ of certiorari. Justices will look at that, and if 4 justices vote to grant the petition, then the Supreme Court puts that on its docket and will hear the case, probably as long as 6, 7, 8, 9 months later. That's how the Supreme Court, and then the case goes for oral argument and usually a decision. The shadow docket is different. The Supreme Court has the ability to stop the implementation of any decision of a court below. So here the district court said New York statute is unconstitutional, start issuing the permits. The Second Circuit said, hold on a second, guys. We haven't finished with that. We're putting a stay on the district court decision until we get around to deciding it. Therefore, the new rules don't apply to concealed carry permits. So it's not uncommon for a court to stay a decision pending a resolution of the matter on the merits. So that's what the Second Circuit did. But now the plaintiffs from the Bruin case are asking the Supreme Court to go on its shadow docket and reverse the Second Circuit's stay and say, during the pendency of this action, issue the concealed permits. Now, I know that's kind of complicated, but that's the way it works. And that's where we are as far as New York is concerned. Now, of course, New York is going to fight this right down to the last governor. They'll do everything they can to stand in the way of the Bruin decision, which basically says if a person wants a concealed carry firearm permit or an open carry permit, you better give it to them, unless there is a good statutory reason not to. And I've talked about this before. Many states and many territories, including this one, before Heller versus District of Columbia was decided, may issue statutes. So our statute said that the chief of police may issue a concealed carry permit if the petitioner shows good reason why he needs to have it. This gave unlimited discretion to the chief of police. Our legislature amended that. We are now a shall issue state. Okay, let's see what we got on the. Let's go to Sammy Cotney next. And here's a real pro-governor opinion. I suspect the governor needs a pro-government opinion, a pro-governor opinion after what happened at the legislature this morning. She probably went into the garbage can, pulled the Daily News out, poured the fish guts out of it, and read that editorial 2 or 3 times before she shoved off her Adeloop. Well, some details of our new leadership are still being ironed out behind the scenes. It seems as though the executive branch is focused on the business before us. On Monday, Governor Lulian Guerrero and Lieutenant Governor Josh Tenorio officially began their second term at the helm of the government of Guam, reaffirming their commitment to serve us once again. Coming off the heels of a historically daunting first term that saw multiple major global crises throw countries, governments, and communities throughout the world into chaos on multiple fronts, the Leon Guerrero Tenorio administration, for all the criticism that's been hurled at it, has managed to pull our island through some serious trauma.
They created it with their policies.
Exactly.
We're going to beat you up and then give you first aid and get credit for it.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. I'll read that again. For all the criticism that's been hurled at it, the Leon Guerrero administration has managed to pull our island through some tough, serious trauma. Yeah. Whether you voted for the administration or not, chastised its actions and protested its authority out in the streets or in the media, the first days of the administration's second term were ushered in with cautious optimism. Mindful of the pandemic we just survived, but nonetheless reassured in our abilities as a people to rebound and rebuild. Quote, but we're not where we were 4 years ago, and we are not as a people who we were 4 years ago. It's not possible to walk through the fire as we have and emerge unchanged, Leon Guerrero stated in her second inaugural address Monday at the university. It's important that we do not lose the self-starting hustle and momentum we achieved these last 3 years. The self-starting hustle, like shutting down the economy, like putting roadblocks out on the highway, checkpoints out on the highway, by allowing stores to sell some things, but not everything. Yeah, we really had a lot of hustle there. Yeah. Ready, get set, stop. Yeah. According to the governor, 10,000 business licenses were filed since the start of 2020, a phenomenal testament to the ingenuity of Guam's people to persevere through challenge and tribulation. I think the challenge was standing in line up at Rev Tax. That was the challenge. We wholeheartedly agree with the governor on the need for our people to build on the self-starting momentum we've created over the past 2 years.
Created what?
The momentum.
Oh, she distributed money that wasn't hers.
Uh-huh.
That's about it. I can give credit for those programs.
The Daily News wholeheartedly agrees with the governor. Guam is by no means out of the proverbial woods, but the growth of small businesses and the entrepreneurs behind their success will be the key to Guam's sustainability, success, and independence in the years ahead. You know, back in the military, sometimes when you see a weak commander, you'll hear the troops muttering under their breath, lead, follow, or get the hell out of the way. And that's what I wish the governor would do. Get the hell out of the way. We hope this second term for the Leon Guerrero administration brings more opportunities for Guam's people to set and reach goals for their own choosing. They must have given the Rin Ratty a front seat at the a reserved seat at the inauguration. Yeah, needs a lot of work, Daily News. Okay, let's take a peek and see what we've got on the card for this afternoon. I start out with 36, 34, of course, and systemic racism. And then I've got 18 versus corruption. And then I've got, we're numerical today, I've got 9 versus 6. And this is a takeoff on Won't Parkinson, C.J. Carbolito, the GOP versus Joe S.N., Tony Babauta versus et cetera, that whole chain. And we're going to spend a little bit of time with my analysis of what happened yesterday and what it portends for the future. Next on the calendar, we've got nepotism versus corruption, CNMI style. And then we've got the government of Guam versus free speech. And this is going to be a primer. If you work for the government of Guam and you wonder what you can say and what you can't say, You're going to want to pay special attention to this. And then I've got China versus Guam, Jungle Watch versus the governor. Some things that have been on the calendar for a few days that I might get to, probably not. Okay, systemic racism. Of course, by now everybody knows that saying that the rice is red means that you subscribe to the narrative. The hell with the truth. If you say that the rice is orange, then you're interested in facts and the truth, even though it may cause you to be canceled. You go for it anyhow. And along the same lines, I picked something up out of Candid today that I put on the calendar as 18 versus corruption. And I'm going to go into the middle of the column. It says, years before we ever came along, these people, and these people refers to the 18, which I'll come back to. Years before we ever came along, these people and others stood at the side of the roads by themselves to protest corruption. They shouted to the rooftops without any support by their side. They sacrificed their livelihood and even their friends and their families for the righteous cause. And then, one by one, each of us grew bolder by their example. We joined them, and little by little, inspired by their courage, we all began to chip away at the establishments of the governments and the churches of the Mariana Islands. Speaking truth to power is dangerous when there's only a single voice shouting against the orchestra of corruption. But we must always remember in those moments of fear that there are more of us than there are of the corrupt. And except for former Senator Ben Pangilinan, who went to live with the Lord a few years ago, everyone on that list above is alive and well and in the fight for justice, despite all it cost them. Candid is proud to be in the fight with them. We may not all agree on every issue, but we also do subscribe to the truth, to the light. And then Troy starts out the column by saying, way before there was a Candid, there was a Glenn Hunter, there was a Ben Pangilinan, there was a Tina Sablon, there was a Tim Rohr, there was Father Matthew Blockley, there was Bob Klitzkie. Let me read that again. There was Bob Klitzkie.
A name so large you have to read it twice.
Really. There was Father Efren Adversario. There was Ray Gibson. There was Selena Roberto Bobota. There was B.J. Cruz. There was Marvick Kagarangan. There was Elizabeth De Leon Guerrero. There was Lee Weber. There was Kilili. There was Michael San Nicolas. There was Ed Probst. There was Heidi Waino Gilbert. There was Lily Aldon. So I can't tell you how good I feel about being included in that list, Jose. Maybe I didn't make the sacrifice. I know some people on that list really made some tremendous sacrifices. I can't say that I have, perhaps not for want of trying. And that's what Tall Tales is all about. You know, it's speaking up and saying the things that are other people's minds, but they're saying, I better not say that because my boss, my neighbors, my wife, my husband, my somebody. So that's why you want to listen to Tall Tales, because I'll let it all fly. Okay, so that was the first item on the card. Next item on the card, simple arithmetic. Now, it's often repeated that the politics, the arithmetic of politics is this. A good politician knows how to add rather than divide. And we saw a good example of that yesterday. And the bottom line of that addition problem came out like this: 9 versus 6 equals Therese. Then I've got nepotism versus corruption, CNMI style. I've got government of Guam versus free speech. And you might want to listen to this if you're working for the government of Guam. I got China versus Guam, etc. So let's start right out with 9 versus 6. Now, for anyone who might have missed it, our Never Say Die producer here will play it for you so you'll know exactly what happened.
Senators, we will resume with the election of the Speaker. The floor is open for nominations. Senator Chris Barnett, you are recognized.
I move to nominate Senator Therese Terlahi as Speaker of the 37th Guam Legislature.
Senator Terlahi, do you accept the nomination?
I do, Your Honor.
Senator Will Parkinson, you are recognized.
I nominate Senator Joe San Augustine for Speaker of the 37th Guam Legislature.
Senator San Augustine, do you accept the nomination?
Yes, I do, Your Honor.
Any other nominations? Senator Jesse Lujan.
I nominate Senator Frank Bloss Jr. for Speaker.
Senator Frank Bloss Jr., do you accept the nomination?
Yes, I do, Your Honor.
Any other nominations from the floor? Senator Sabina Perez, you are recognized.
Thank you, Your Honor. I move to close the nominations for Speaker.
Motion carries. The first nominee, please raise your right hand, all those in favor of Senator Therese Terlahi. For Senator Joe San Augustine. For Senator Frank Bloss Jr.
Your Honor, I respectfully decline my nomination.
So the results of the votes by a show of hands in the order of the nominations, Senator Therese Terlahi received 9 votes, and Senator Joe San Augustine received 6 votes. Therefore, Senator Therese Terlahi, having received the majority of the members, is duly elected as the Speaker of the 37th Guam Legislature.
So there you go. So this was an extremely bitter pill for the 6 Democrats to swallow. I expect the governor needed 3 or 4 glasses of water to get this pill down, because it was obviously a pretty bitter pill for her. I reported yesterday that an impeccable source told me that the governor came over and addressed the Democrat caucus yesterday and gave Therese Terlahi and the triumvirate a Class A ass chewing and told them to get with it, support the party, etc. So the biggest loser here is actually the governor. So what happened, what happened there was obvious, that the 6th Republican, that Therese and her triumvirate made a deal with the Republicans, that the Republicans would support Therese and in the process get certain concessions. Now, how do you find out what the concessions were? The concessions are contained in the standing rules that the legislature adopted. And yesterday, the standing rules for the 37th legislature were adopted, again, much to the chagrin of the Democrats, because the standing rules were handed out literally seconds before a motion was made to adopt them. And Senator Tina Rose Munya Barnes asked for a few minutes to glance at them. Joe San Augustine wanted to recess so they could study the standing rules. He made a motion to that effect. Guess what? The motion failed. Yeah. Now, if you're sitting there and you're looking at this as though, you know, you're a total stranger to this and you've never seen these proceedings before. I've seen this so many times. And in a gentlemanly legislature, if the Democrats had had their stuff together, they would have straightened out the speaker, the committee chairs, at least a week ago, if not longer. And they would have hammered out a draft of the standing rules, and they would have given it to the Republicans and said, if you guys got any comments, let us have them. They might have ignored all of the comments. They might have said, thanks a lot for your help. We like them just the way we are. We got the votes. We're going to go forward. But more often than not, it happens just like it happened yesterday. The minority doesn't even get a chance to get past the cover before they vote on the standing rules. And that's where the deal is contained. So here's the deal as far as I've been able to figure it out. The Republicans will have the vice chair of every committee will be a Republican, chosen by the Republicans. And the vice chair of every committee will have subpoena power, even in the absence of the approval of the committee chair. It's written into the standing rules. There will be 4 members on the Rules Committee from the minority, and I think, let's see, to sweeten up the deal, 2 future draft choices and a groundskeeper.
I heard that too.
If you're a baseball fan, yeah. So, big day for the Republicans. The Republicans had a good hand, and it looks like they took every trick.
And standing rules can only be created the day for one time for the entire.
But they can be amended at any time. You can get 8 votes together. Yeah. Now, once upon a time, it said the rule said it took 10. It took 10. Or back in the day, it took 14 when there were 21. But super majorities won't stand challenge. So it's a simple majority vote. And you might expect to see some battles fought over that in the future if the 6 could split 2 off from what now amounts to the coalition, the triumvirate and the GOP. If they could split 2 off, then they might try to amend the standing rules.
Well, I told you before the show started, I saw something interesting. I'm sure other people picked it up.
Yeah.
During the vote for the heads of the committee, Senator Bloss Jr. did not vote to approve of them. However, the Democrat Senator St. Nicholas, the freshman, did vote along with that coalition. And I find that curious, too.
Well, maybe Bloss was just too lazy to raise his hand. And maybe St. Nicholas wanted to send a signal. You know, the signal is, I want to work with you guys. Could be. Now, of course, the committees and the chair were in those standing rules. And, of course, that's why everybody wants to see them. But that was all cooked up by the Republicans and the triumvirate. I don't know who the Scrivener was, but obviously it had to be acceptable to all 9 or it wouldn't have been adopted. So that's what happened yesterday. Now, what are the long-term ramifications of this? Obviously, you got 6 people at the legislature whose noses are bent way, way out of shape. Just even on TV, just looking at facial expressions and body language, they were not enjoying this at all.
It looked like they were at a wake.
But, you know, the legislature is a deliberative body. It is democracy. Whoever can get a majority of the votes is going to carry the day. So if the Democrats, and I heard this from a pretty reliable source, Joe St. Augustine, took a pretty much standoffish approach. You know, I'm not going to negotiate with you guys. You know, we should support us. And obviously, Therese Terlahi and the triumvirate did negotiate. So, you know, if you don't want to play the game and you wind up losing, there's a Chamorro expression that comes in handy here. Benetsu. It's what you get. So my old Aunt Florence would say, well, they made their bed, now they're going to have to lie in it. And they'll be lying in that bed for the next 2 years. And the fact that they recessed yesterday, subject to the call of the Speaker, doesn't mean that from now on it's going to be the standard old, we're the majority, you guys are the minority, tench hut, forward march. It's not going to be that at all. Because there is certainly the possibility that the triumvirate's going to feel a whole lot more comfortable with the GOP than it will be with the 6 members of their party, because no matter how magnanimous the 6 are, they're going to be pretty angry at Therese and the other 2. And that anger is not going to die down. It's going to take more than a serial, oh, my bad, by the 3. So you can expect there will be bad feelings on the part of the 6. Those bad feelings will manifest themselves in the lawmaking process, one way or the other, and will tend to drive to make the split wider than it is now, if that's possible. So, you know, the ultimate here could be that the coalition becomes permanent. I don't expect the 3 to bail out of the Democrat Party, but you could see that bills get enacted because the coalition wants them enacted, not because the majority party wants them enacted.
If this becomes a 2-year coalition, it is definitely strange bedfellows, because all 3 of those Democrats are extremely variant from each other. They had one thing in common, though. They weren't going to be whipping posts.
Yeah, and they weren't going to be pawns for the governor.
Right.
Yeah. Well, the old saying is politics makes strange bedfellows.
There you go.
Yeah. Okay, we'll come back to this, and I'd like to see your posts on this. I'll respond to questions, etc.
Happy holidays, Guam. From now through January 13th, the Guam Visitors Bureau is giving you a chance to win $150 in cash just by sharing your Christmas spirit. Each week, GVB will announce the theme of the week, so take your best photo or video and upload to visitguam.com/Instaguam to enter for a chance to win $150 in cash. Winners will be announced every Friday. Brought to you by GVB, making Guam a better place to celebrate the season of giving.
Choice Broadcasting introduces their unbeatable lineup of morning shows.
Hands down winners of Guam's morning radio battle.
Daryl Lizama grooves his way through Boss 104, playing Guam's favorite classic hits.
Morning mouth Ray Gibson shakes the cage on 93.3 The Point.
And now, we are proud to announce the Morning Blender with Kyle Mandapat, mixing it up at sunrise on Star 101.
If you're an advertiser trying to reach the most valuable ears, we've got the shows that listeners have been tuning into for decades.
One call gets all 3.
671-888-7346. That's 888-REIO.
Okay, so here we are.
Welcome back to Tall Tales with Bob Klitzkie, Guam's single voice of reason. Call now, 888-TALK. That's 888-8255.
Jose is signing in a couple callers, but I'll go on here a little bit. Now, here's another ramification. Last week I mentioned that a reliable source had told me that the chair of the Democrat Party, a certain 19th floor gentleman named Tony Babauta, had communicated with the majority that anyone who relied on Republican support to get one of the legislative offices would be kicked out of the Democrat Party and wouldn't be able to caucus. So, Tony Babauta, it looks like you got your bluff called, because that would be a wonderful thing That would be for the Republicans. That would be the frosting on the cake if Tony comes forward and does that. And for the next election, that's the kind of thing that people wouldn't forget. So, Tony, will the real Tony Babauta please stand up? And then here's another one where the Republicans put their thumb in the eye of the Democrat Party. Ordinarily, in order to be chairman of rules, you're looking for a seasoned senator. You're looking for somebody who's been around for 3 or 4 terms, who really understands the mechanics of the legislature, how it functions, the rules, how the operations are function, and politics. That's who usually gets it. And you go back and you'll see that's who's been chairman of rules. This time around, Malfunction was hardly sworn in, and he ascends to the very pinnacle of power.
He has a new name for me. Chris, hey, I'm just new at this, Barnett.
Yeah.
That was his first motion. He just flubbed.
Yeah. Well, practice makes perfect. He just didn't turn on his mic, that's all.
That's all.
Yeah.
This time he did.
Yeah. So, that had to have been a certain amount of satisfaction for the Republicans. Tina Rose Munya Barnes, you're not going to be chairman of rules this time around. We're picking the newest guy we've got, Chris Barnett. He's going to be the chairman of rules. Eat your heart out. I mean, he's going to be on the rules. Yeah, chairman of rules. Eat your heart out. And there are more things that I'll dribble out here as we go along. I've got Phil on the line, and I've got Peter Santos on the line. We'll start with Phil. Go ahead, Phil.
Hey, good morning, Mr. Klitzkie, sir.
Good morning.
I mean afternoon.
Whatever makes you happy. It's morning somewhere.
Yeah, I just woke up anyways. Did I hear that right, that Therese retained the speaker?
You heard it right. You heard it on Tall Tales. You know it's right.
All right. No, I always thought the number one vote getter in the majority of the party that wins gets the speakership.
I don't think I've ever seen that happen. I know that's the common mythology.
Yeah, that's what I thought, the common mythology.
Yeah.
But anyways, Tony Babauta, yeah, you're right to call him out on that because the party is the one that did that black thing across Therese, Malfunction, and several other Democrats that not are. So they're the ones they've been ousted. So this is his doing.
He's got to take a pretty good chunk of the blame.
Yep, and I agree. I just would call to agree with you, Mr. Klitzkie. And to me, you're always right.
I was actually wrong back in 1947.
Okay.
Yeah.
Great listening to your show. Thank you.
Thanks for calling, Phil. Yeah, back in 1947, I thought I was wrong about something, but I was actually right. But it still counts as being wrong because I was wrong.
You're winning when you're losing.
Yeah, I was wrong about being wrong. Okay, and then we've got Peter Santos. Peter Santos, go ahead, repeat.
Yeah, I know why they picked Chris because he's the guy that coined the phrase Zotner rules. So it only makes sense that he's the chairman of the rules.
It does.
No, you said the word benetsu, and I just wanted to chime in. It comes from Spanish, which is buen hecho, which means good job, but in a sarcastic way. Like, you did a good job, do it again, right? And then the other word in Chamorro for bad sports is ladzu. When someone is upset about something and they hold a grudge, that's ladzu. They're ladzu.
Ladzu.
Yeah.
Okay. Hey, Partidin Ladzu. Thank you, repeat.
Yes, that.
Yeah, good call. Thank you. I need all the help I can get. Gifina tomorrow night. So yeah, we can look forward to some really interesting times here. Let's It's time to take a break, I guess, Jose. Let's take a short break here.
Every company needs money to grow and take on the challenges 2023 will bring.
That's why Bank Pacific's commercial loan officers stand ready to help you.
We offer several programs tailored to assist companies to get to the next step or perhaps for a startup,
including working with SBA or GITA.
Services to choose. Bank Pacific, where others put branches.
Bank Pacific.
We want to be your partner.
Equal opportunity lender. Member FDIC.
Credit conditions apply.
Come try Guam's original Chamorro restaurant with Pica's Best 5 years running. Mezcla Chamorro Fusion Bistro. Experience Chef Peter's candied salmon over scallion coconut rice, octopus to naktak, Chamorro platter, and their award-winning gourmet hamburgers. Or if you're looking for something healthy, try their keto-friendly menu. Come and enjoy Mezcla's half-a-day service at their Hagåtña and Grand Plaza Tuman location. Call their Hagåtña location at 479-2652 for reservations.
Okay, so here we go again. Just a few more, a little bit more mumbling here about the legislature. So my analysis is that you could see what is now a split become a gigantic fissure between the Terlahi triumvirate and the 6 Republicans, so completely changing the complexion of the legislature. How will the governor react to this? The governor, I don't think, has made her name for herself as a conciliator, as a mediator, as a one who's good at getting people to work together.
Well, rumor has it that they're purchasing new Governor Mansion plates today.
Governor Mansion plates?
Because they've all been destroyed.
Because they've all been broken, huh? Yeah. Oh, dinner plates.
Dinner plates.
I was thinking license plates.
Oh,
yeah.
That's next.
Yeah. Yeah, so I expect the split to get worse. And the Republicans have shown for the first time in quite some time a sense of strategy and tactics to put the strategy in place and perform brilliantly here. I'm expecting that same brilliance to last throughout the session so they can get through some of the legislation that they need to get through. Now, that's going to be a little tough because although all 9 of them may have agreed on who they want to be speaker, they might not agree on some of the harder issues. But that's why we have a representative democracy to work these things out. So I guess my final pronouncement here on the split between the 6 Democrats and the coalition of the triumvirate and the GOP is this: anything that makes for good talk radio can't be all bad. Right, Jose?
Absolutely.
Yeah. Okay, next item on the card is nepotism versus corruption in the CNMI. And I need to do a little bit of a preface here. I'm going to read some articles here that show that, that nepotism is just running wild in the CNMI. And, of course, my usual line about nepotism is that, well, I know a lot of people criticize nepotism, but actually, nepotism's okay so long as you keep it in the family. Where's that snare drum, Jose? Yeah. So, what I see here, after living on the island for 60 years and putting a lot of effort into finding out how things work, how they don't work, the customs and traditions, folkways, mores, taboos, etc., of the folks who've lived on this island for thousands of years, I come to this conclusion that family is, keeping the family together is an extremely strong value on this island. That you might even say that in many contexts, if not most, maybe for some, all. Family is everything. Anything other than family is secondary. Now, I'm not going to go back to the pre-contact times, only starting out with the Spanish administration and the naval administration and the Japanese administration. Up until 1950, democracy was a word that kids might have learned in school. That was it. Because certainly during the naval administration, Guam was a dictatorship. We had the naval governor, who was either a captain or a rear admiral, was the dictator. He had absolute power, legislative, judicial, and executive. And I suspect whether it was a fact or not, people other than naval personnel and Marines got the idea that there were really kind of two sets of rules, one for them and one for us. And that the chances of getting a fair shake out of them, at least in the perception, was not great. So what the folks had to rely on was family and connections and helping one another out and relying on one another and that sort of thing. Now, if that were true during the naval administration, if it were true, my analysis would have been it was somewhat ameliorated just by what I'm going to call the American personality. As a general principle, Americans are fairly kind, relatively fair people who don't want to see somebody not get a fair shake. Now, of course, there are all different kinds of attitudes and approaches, and that doesn't go for every American. But I think I could make a pretty good argument that up until 1950, that would have worked for most of the Americans that were here, Navy, Marine Corps, civilians, whatever. And witness that, how many people, how many local folks married military personnel. And our nomenclature, Costinha na Chamorro Honganya no uno, dos, tres. Hajianiha. Oh, McDonald is a Chamorro name. Anderson, yeah. Wadpat, that's different. Yeah. So I suspect that this family allegiance is pretty deeply rooted. So then in 1950, the Americans come along with their Organic Act, and the Organic Act says the legislature must establish a merit system. Now, that is a term that has definite meaning. It works on how you hire people, how you promote people. And in a merit system, people are hired because they show that they can do the job that they've applied for. Ordinarily, that they would be the best candidate for that job among those that had applied. So this system then oftentimes runs head-on into the family system. So if you have a family member who has hiring authority and a member of the family applies for the job, and let's say he's qualified, and somebody else applies for the job that's qualified, and the job goes to somebody else, the one who did the hiring, the family member who did the hiring, is going to be blacklisted. He could have hired Uncle so-and-so, but he hired Jack McClukenbutch, and said, what the hell's wrong with him? So these habits, these traditions don't easily evaporate. Once they become part of the traditions of a people, they tend to stick for a long time. Now, in the CNMI, if what I said is true here, it's true in spades on the CNMI for several reasons. One, the CNMI is smaller. Fewer people, less land, etc. So it's a closer in type thing. Second, the CNMI only cut their, only took off in anything like a democracy in 1984, after they became a Commonwealth of the United States. And when the negotiators for the folks in Saipan cut their deal, there's a provision in the covenant that said that there in the Northern Marianas there is no constitutional right to a jury trial, unlike the rest of the country. And in the rest of the country, we see jury trials as an extremely important safeguard against bad government. An overzealous prosecutor or a prosecutor who wants to prosecute somebody, the prosecutor who wants to be a persecutor instead. No jury trials in the Northern Marianas. That's the deal they wanted to make. And I think it probably goes back to what I've said. Nobody in the CNMI probably wants to sit in judgment of someone who might be a distant relative, which is probably everybody else in the CNMI, right? And after the Commonwealth government first kicked off, the talk around the bar was, man, it's hard to get a conviction in a criminal jury trial in the Northern Marianas. The ones that were held, it was really hard to do, because we see some of it here. You catch somebody is charged or somebody is sued for pilfering from a paint store, and we've got videos of him. His hands are covered with red paint, and he goes to trial, or he doesn't go to trial because when somebody says to the paint store owner, "Man, you caught that guy red-handed. Why didn't you sue?" Gatson, sota prim. We'll just let it go. Let it go. That sota part of the culture is still pretty strong. So this kind of explains some of the stuff that goes on in the Northern Marianas. Let's take a break for halftime. I'll come back to nepotism versus boost.
The Point is KUSG, Hagåtña, Guam, 93.3 FM and 104.3 HD3.
Talks behind the scenes. I'm Jack Callahan, Fox News. Between would-be House Speaker Kevin McCarthy and some of the 20 or so Republicans opposing him, there are signs of progress reported. Florida's Matt Gaetz telling Fox News at night.
If we got control of those key committees in the hands of conservatives, I think there are some of the 20 who might vote for Kevin McCarthy. If things stand as they are, I would suspect that the opposition will only grow.
But New York Republican Claudia Tenney questions some of the motives of those opposing McCarthy.
This shouldn't be about personal grievances. It's about the American people. And some of these people actually put forth personal issues that they wanted to gain for themselves and not the American people and not our conference.
There have been 6 ballots taken without a speaker chosen, a 7th coming up shortly after noon. There likely will be a court hearing Thursday in Idaho for Brian Koberger, who was returned to the state last night to face 4 counts of murder for the deaths of the university students. He must be arraigned within 24 hours. Some of the evidence against him could be revealed in that court hearing. Set to begin at this hour in Rome, the funeral for the Pope Emeritus.
Benedict was not a sitting pope, so it's not a state funeral. The only official delegations are from Germany, Benedict's native home, and Italy. The U.S. ambassador to the Holy See, Joe Donnelly, will represent the United United States. Pope Benedict requested a simple funeral. The Vatican, with no modern-day precedent for a retired Pope's Mass, also wanted the same.
Fox's Lauren Green in Rome. The West Coast storm system now spreading into southern Oregon. Police in Medford say trees have been uprooted and at least one roof has been blown off in high winds. 23 areas in California downslope from previous wildfires have been ordered evacuated over fears that heavy rains will trigger mudslides. There are also some flight delays reported because of the storm. Wall Street Wednesday, the Dow up 133 points. NASDAQ gained 71. America is listening to Fox News.
Every company needs money to grow and take on the challenges 2023 will bring.
That's why Bank Pacific's commercial loan officers stand ready to help you.
We offer several programs tailored to assist companies to get to the next step or perhaps for a startup,
including working with SBA or GITA.
Now we're banking on the future. Services to choose. Bank Pacific, where others put branches.
Bank Pacific.
We want to be your partner.
Equal opportunity lender. Member FDIC.
Credit conditions apply.
Come try Guam's original Chamorro restaurant with Pica's Best 5 years running. Mezcla Chamorro Fusion Bistro. Experience Chef Peter's candied salmon over scallion coconut rice, octopus to naktak, Chamorro platter, and their award-winning gourmet hamburgers. Or if you're looking for something healthy, try their keto-friendly menu. Come and enjoy Mezcla's half-a-day service at their Hagåtña and Grand Plaza Tuman location. Call their Hagåtña location at 479-2652 for reservations.
There's been a disturbing find in a home in southern Utah. 3 adults and 5 kids dead.
Cops say all 8 victims had been shot to death. They discovered the bodies when they went to the home on a welfare check. They say all the victims are related, but are not revealing a motive. But police say that there's no apparent threat to the public and that no suspects remain at large. A crisis intervention team will greet students at the schools the dead children attended. Gary Baumgarten, Fox News.
Southwest Airlines holiday week meltdown now triggering a class action lawsuit.
A Southwest Airlines passenger whose flight was canceled over the holiday week during the company's widespread and days-long systems meltdown is now suing. The class action lawsuit filed by Eric Capdeville of Louisiana states Southwest's failure to provide prompt refunds for canceled flights violates not only its contract of carriage, but also federal law. Capdeville was supposed to fly on December 27th from New Orleans to Portland, Oregon with his daughter, but his trip was canceled, like thousands of others that also fell victim to the air carrier's massive failure. According to court documents, he claims he was not given a refund as promised by the Dallas-based company's own policy. Instead, he was, quote, only offered a credit for use on a future flight.
Fox's Molly Line reports thousands of Southwest passengers are still waiting for their luggage to be returned. South Carolina's highest court will hear arguments Thursday on whether a newly organized firing squad or the old electric chair are legal ways to execute inmates in the state. South Carolina has been unable to obtain drugs for lethal injections. A lower court judge ruled back in September that state lawmakers ignored advances in scientific research and evolving standards of humanity and decency when they passed the law effectively forcing the condemned to choose between being electrocuted or being shot to death. I'm Jack Callahan. This is Fox News.
Half a day, this is Honey. Here at APL, our expertise and extensive network can help you grow your business and reach out to more global markets. As a responsible carrier, APL is also committed to a sustainable future, whether it's protecting the environment or investing our efforts in giving back to the community. Our dedicated teams in Guam, Saipan, and on U.S. mainland are here to support you. Call 588-4651 or visit apl.com.
This holiday season at the Micronesia Mall, shop and redeem receipts totaling $10 or more. Scratch and win for a chance at instant prizes from Burger King or Foot Locker. Or receive a grand prize entry form for our drawing on February 4th for a chance to win a new Lexus UX 250 Hybrid from Atkins Kroll Lexus. 10 lucky runners-up will get $250 gift certificates from Goodwin Travel and Tour for tickets to Philippine Airlines. Shop more, win more this holiday season at the Micronesia Mall. Follow us on Facebook and Instagram for more information. Terms and conditions apply.
Listen to The Point anytime, anywhere on Odyssey. Odyssey is your new audio home for all the music, news, sports, and podcasts that matter to you. Find your favorite stations like The Point and discover more. Music stations, local and trusted news sources, sports talk and team coverage, plus today's biggest podcasts. Find it all on the Odyssey app, AUDACY.
Well, there you have it, another exciting halftime show, capped off with a glance at the Tailgaters Rogues Gallery. And, of course, we're waiting anxiously, Jose, to see Mrs. Utah's picture on the Tailgaters Rogues Gallery. But you could tell everybody how they can get on Rogues Gallery.
It's very simple, Bob. They could log on their browser to thepoint.gu, look for the T-shirt with the beard, click on that link, and then order your shirt. When it comes in, put it on and take a selfie and send that selfie to the Points WhatsApp at 671-797-8255. And you, too, could be a part of the Rogues Gallery.
Okay, very good. So looking forward to see you tailgaters up there in the Rogues Gallery. Next item on the card here is nepotism versus Boost. And Boost is an acronym. It's a program that the government of Northern Mariana has put in place to give money to people. I've got a couple articles here from Candid that pretty descriptive of what's going on up there. First article, Boost connects. Republican mayor and chair's families paid $375,000, including 2 awards to convicted federal felon former senator. It was a Republican grab for cash in Tinian both before and after the elections, according to a closer look into the Boost program list of awardees by the Bank of Saipan. Candid researched the ownership of the companies listed on the award list submitted to the Commonwealth Legislature as commanded by subpoena. This is the 5th in this Boost Connects investigative series, and in today's report, companies directly tied to Mayor Edwin Aldan, his chief of staff, and the chairman of the Tinian Republican Party made away with nearly $500,000 in federal grants. Candid previously reported that the mayor's wife, Rosita King Aldan, received $20,000, according to the Bank of Guam, for the company Fern B&B. According to the Commonwealth Public Records, Fern B&B only became a company on November 15 of this year. November 15, after the election. Now, do you think someone would do this? The election's over, and Taurus lost, but, you know, you're connected with Taurus. So you get a business license, and you start this company, and you apply for a $20,000 grant. Because, you know, it's on January 2, it's going to be over. You think anybody would do that, Jose?
Somebody with the initials MCS did.
Yeah. Going on. She wasn't the only member of the mayor's family, according to Bank of Saipan records. According to the list and a cross-reference with Tinian business license office records, Benedicto de Sena, JTK Sound Equipment Rental, was paid $50,000 on October 5, and then $40,000 2 weeks later. The company belongs to Mayor Aldan's father. Just a coincidence, I'm sure. The mayor's brother-in-law, Juanio L. Villagomez, was paid $20,000 for his company, Deep 7, according to the list. Mr. Villagomez is also the Tinian Department of Public Safety chief. Another company received a double payout and is connected directly to Mayor Aldan. Mary Susan Paris, Susan's house rental, was paid $40,000 on October 5. And just like the company owned by the mayor's father, Susan's house rental received a second award 2 weeks later of $25,000. Ms. Paris is the wife of Mr. Aldan's chief of staff. This brings the total amount of federal funds via Boost that Mayor Aldan's family and office received to $195,000 within a 60-day period that surrounded the election. Federal grant funds were awarded to the Tinian Republican chairman and his brother, according to the Business License Office official Genevieve Santos and the Bank of Saipan list. On October 21, party chairman Ray De La Cruz's DC Coral received a $120,000 grant. On November 15, Mr. De La Cruz's brother, Jose De La Cruz's company, De La Cruz Supplies and Services, was paid $20,000. 25 days later, and after Torres lost the election in a landslide, Jose De La Cruz received a second payment of $40,000. That's a total of $180,000 to the De La Cruz brothers alone. Jose De La Cruz, a former senator, reportedly is no stranger to federal crime violations. According to an October 10, 2003 article in Radio New Zealand, the former senator was sentenced to 2 years in federal prison after pleading guilty to conspiracy to commit wire fraud. He faced an original 26-count charge of wire fraud, which carried a maximum of 260 years in prison if he had been convicted at trial. According to the Radio New Zealand article, the court found that Atalik and De La Cruz entered into a scheme to defraud the CNMI government by providing fictitious jobs in favor of their relatives, with the former hiring the latter's daughter as a community worker in his Saipan office from 2000 until 2002. At the time, she was actually studying at the university, probably finance and criminal justice. A double major. The arrangement resulted in a transfer of government payroll money amounting to some $39,663 in salary, health benefits, life insurance, etc., and retirement fund contributions to Margie's account. Pretty interesting, huh? Like I said, nepotism's okay if you keep it in the family.
What's interesting is this is not the first corruption case or the second or third that's happened up there. When will they get it through their heads that they're not going to get away with it?
Yeah.
Every single time.
Okay.
Unless it's more rampant than we think, and this is just the tip of the iceberg.
It could be. I have another article from Candid. Watch and read when actions speak louder than words. Boost connects Senate President's family top campaign official to get boosted. Senate President Jude Hofschneider, a Republican from Tinian, told senators in the closing session of the 22nd Commonwealth Senate that he's disappointed with the Boost program. He said he does not know what to tell people who call him to ask whether they'll ever get a fair shot at federally funded grants for small businesses. There's an old saying, actions speak louder than words. In the video below, you can watch and listen to Mr. Hofschneider's words, but don't miss the story below that indicate his actions, which tell a wholly different story. Of course, we can't show the video. Mr. Bora's fortunes through the Boost program didn't end here. His wife's company, Benedicta L. Bora, Ready to Wear, received a $20,000 grant on December 5, according to the list. December 5, post-election. The Boras weren't first in the family to receive a grant. According to the list, Hadzu Ha received $50,000 on October 5, 2022. The Tunian Business Office had no record of Hadzu Ha. The candidate was told no such company existed. Well, the fact that they didn't exist didn't stop from getting a $50,000 grant, a minor technicality. The Saipan office, however, found a record showing the company belongs to Huck L. Bora. According to Ms. Santos, this is the same person as Tun Friday's son. On October 5, Tinian company K-Town LLC was among the first awarding the Building Optimism and Opportunities for Stability Together program. That's what BOOST stands for. Building Optimism and Opportunities for Stability Together. The company received $50,000 that day. Unsatisfied with their fortunes, K-Town put in another application, and though thousands of politically unconnected, legitimate small businesses and said, "Now I got nothing," K-Town on October 21, just 16 days later, received $75,000. This $125,000 richer company is owned by Eric Kwan, according to the Commonwealth Business License Office. Mr. Kwan is Tinian Senator Jude Hofschneider's son-in-law. Mr. Hofschneider is Senate President, who put up every roadblock to prevent the removal of Governor Torres from office earlier this year, despite thousands of pages of documented evidence of corruption. But the insanity doesn't stop there. Mr. Hofschneider's son-in-law isn't the only family member to benefit from the Torres administration's misuse of federal funds. Less than a month after K-Town received its second grant award, the company John R. Santos and Corrine H. Santos, Isla Rental, received a $20,000 boost. Ms. Santos is the senator's sister. So a pretty interesting story, but an extremely sad story for our friends in the Northern Marianas. And let's see, I got Johnny Utah on the line here. CNMI Observations. Is Johnny back on Facebook? No, he called. That's right. Yeah. Tell us more, Johnny Utah.
Hey, Judge Bob. Quick question. There's no National Guard in the CNMI. Is that correct?
That's correct.
So, and Ralph Torres is still the governor of Saipan, correct? And will be for some
No,
time?
the new governor was inaugurated on January 2nd. He's out.
Okay. So he is out, and that was a smooth transition. Okay. Yeah, because I was looking at while you were talking about everything that's been going on there, and I went on Candid's not Facebook, but their website, and I've been paying attention to that. It made me wonder, what happens if there's kind of an uprising there, because the nepotism there, it's not as big of a population as Guam. It's half of Guam's population, maybe even just a third of the population of Guam. And with the nepotism that's going on there and all the families that are connected into the corruption and the money that's going on there, what would happen if it really became truly unstable and the government from the United States had to retake control of the island for whatever means necessary? I understand there's been Navy ships that have been docking there periodically, which is not normal in the last year, that have amphibious capabilities, able to put Marines on the land and what have you. But it occurred to me, what would they do, if the Ralph Torres family and the crime syndicates there truly took control and said, you're not taking our money, FBI.
It's an interesting question, Johnny. I could give you some speculation, but my sense is that we're not even close to something like that. I have hopes that the new governor. My old Aunt Florence used to say that a new broom sweeps the cleanest, and we've got a new administration coming in here that's talked really tough about cleaning up the corruption. Let's give him a chance. And Torres is being prosecuted right now for some of the things that he did while he was in office. And there's no limit to what can happen up there. And then we know, of course, that the Federal Bureau of Investigation is nosing around and picking up bank records. So I wouldn't be surprised if the feds get into this act also, Johnny.
I think they already are. I'm quite confident they already are. Just on the basis of everything that Troy's been reporting over the last, what has it been now, a year and a half since Troy started these stories on the CNMI?
Seems like it. 2 years, 3 years, yeah.
Yeah, 2 years, year and a half, 2 years is when it all started. And I thought it was interesting that the Navy started doing LCS stops in Saipan in just the last year, which they hadn't been doing that before. Which those landing crafts are like mini National Guards. So I don't know. Maybe I'm connecting the dots. Maybe I'm reading the tea leaves. Looking through what have you. But I wouldn't. I wouldn't be surprised. I don't think that syndicate there with the casino and all that money is going to go down swinging. And there are ties to the Chinese government, is there not?
Well, a good lawyer friend of mine told me that that Chinese people from China have really infiltrated into the community and taken over a lot of important undertakings in the Northern Marianas. And we know that China is trying to develop its influence throughout the Pacific wherever it can. So
that is true. That is true. Palau, the Solomon Islands, definitely the Northern Mariana Islands, and yes, that's all I wanted to point out. I just thought that it was, what would happen if, the Torres family and the crime syndicate there stood up and said, yeah, we're not going to follow your rules anymore, and they held it with force.
Well, as I said, I don't think that's likely, but I rest assured that if something like that happened, there would be all kinds of ways of dealing with it. So thanks again for calling. It's always good to talk to you, Johnny, and give our best to Mrs. Utah.
I will. She's at home, so I'm at work right now.
Okay, Johnny.
Yeah.
So,
Alrighty, adios.
Bob, I was just a kid. Well, I was an old kid when Desert Shield began. But before it was even called Desert Shield or anything happened, my dad was stationed at Fort Drum. And we started seeing things that we've never seen before. PT and hazmat uniforms. The gates started to check IDs, which they never did before. Different things that were odd. But it made sense once that Desert Shield happened because they shut everything down. But that's just observations after the fact. But when you see some maneuvers happening, there's a purpose for it. But I think the purpose is to show China that the U.S. is here.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think so too. That's, sailing through the Taiwan Strait, bringing large numbers of planes out to Anderson, having ships do port calls here. Yeah, I've mentioned this on the show before that when it comes to geopolitical military strategy, it's like a game of chess. If we do something in Palau, we may not ever intend to fire a shot in anger from Palau, but if we set up capabilities in Palau, that forces China to do something to counter it. And that's the way it kind of goes. Okay, next item on the card is Gov Guam versus free speech. And I've got a lot of stuff here. I want to start out with just some free speech in general here. Yeah, let's take a short break, and I'll come back to Gov Guam versus free speech.
Wrigley Field?
Yeah, let's head for Wrigley Field.
All three stations, all three morning shows. Thanks to all the listeners for Topeka's Best. Choice Broadcasting has swept the top three best radio stations. The Point, Boss 104, and Star 101. Top three radio personalities, Kyle Mandapat, Ray Gibson, and Daryl Lizava. Put the power of Topeka's Best to work for you. If you're an advertiser, call 671-888-7346 for information, rates, and packages. And let us get your message out to Topeka's Best listeners with Topeka's Best broadcasters. And thanks for listening to Topeka's Best.
Every company needs money to grow and take on the challenges 2023 will bring.
That's why Bank Pacific's commercial loan officers stand ready to help you.
We offer several programs tailored to assist companies to get to the next step or perhaps for a startup,
including working with SBA or GITA.
Now we're banking on the future. Services to choose. Bank Pacific, where others put branches.
Bank Pacific.
We want to be your partner.
Equal opportunity lender. Member FDIC.
Credit conditions apply.
Okay, so here we go, Wrigley Field, Chicago. It means I got just 2 innings more to complete before I can hang up my glove, walk into the dugout, hang up my glove, and head for home. So this article is called Stony Brook Professor Under Fire for Denouncing Officers Who Shot Suspect Who Was Stabbing Them. Stony Brook is part of the New York State University system. I've got a column here by my favorite columnist, Jonathan Turley. Stony Brook University professor is under fire this week after she called 2 police officers murderers for shooting dead a suspect. Social welfare professor Anna Hayward denounced the officers despite the fact that the officers suffered, quote, serious stab wounds from the suspects before shooting him. I understand the anger of those who call for Hayward to be fired. The attack on the officers was unwarranted and seems part of a long-standing anti-police views. However, it will come as little surprise for many on this blog. I believe that adverse actions would violate core free speech rights, which apparently don't exist at the University of Guam. Hayward was outraged over the shooting and asked on Instagram, why did a man have to die? What about the man they murdered? That man stabbed and seriously injured the 2 officers with one with threatening neck wounds. So this guy is stabbing officers, one in the neck, and they shoot him. They shouldn't have shot him. A 3rd officer was transported to the hospital. Hayward's comments are reminiscent of minor comments of The View co-host Joy Behar. You don't need to say bizarre comments when you say Joy Behar. Everybody knows that, right? And how officers should have shot in the air in the case of Makia Bryant in Columbus, Ohio. Bryant was about to stab another girl when officers fired to stop her from committing murder. And Joy Behar says they shouldn't have shot, they shouldn't have murdered her, should have shot into the air. In this case, Hayward asked, this was a wellness check. Why didn't they de-escalate the situation? Well, the answer may be that it's hard to de-escalate the situation when the suspect is stabbing you in the neck.
Excuse, can you please stop?
Well, I guess, if you don't like to be stabbed in the neck, be biblical. Turn the other cheek. It sounds like the university will stand by Hayward's right to speak freely on such subjects, even statements that are highly controversial. In a January 2 statement, Stony Brook correctly stressed that Hayward made her comments from her own private account that is not affiliated with the university. However, there was good reason for Hayward to expect she would be protected. There is no massive cancel campaign or protests on campus. The support enjoyed by the faculty on the left is in sharp contrast to treatment given faculty with moderate, conservative, or libertarian views. Anyone who raises such dissenting views is immediately set upon by a mob demanding their investigation or termination. You get the drift here of what Turley's beyond saying. But the point of this article here is that a lady said something that was incredibly stupid, incredibly wrong, incredibly maddening. When I hear somebody say something like that, how stupid can you be? It's better to let the lady kill the cops than to do their job. Now, with the police officer shooting the one that was stabbing the little girl, had they not shot the stabber, they would have been going to prison because they didn't do their duty. So the point that Turley makes here is that no matter how outrageous the statement is that a university type makes, that doesn't automatically mean that that person must be disciplined. Now, I'm going to go into when discipline lies and when it doesn't. And I start out with a Supreme Court case that was just decided, I think, on 2 days ago, called Chotfris versus Civil Service Commission. Mark Chotfris. You'll recall that Mark Chotfris really made a name for himself a few 4th of July, about 5 years ago on the 4th of July. Got a lot of earned media out of that. And the Supreme Court and the police department, the chief of police at that time, Chief J.I. Cruz, fired Chotfris. Chotfris appealed to the Civil Service Commission. The Civil Service Commission sustained the termination. Chotfris went to the Superior Court. Superior Court sustained. Then to the Supreme Court, same thing. So Chotfris lost every point along the way. And I predicted this, and you might remember at the time that I reeled off the names of the 3 landmark decisions that deal with government speech. And those are exactly the hooks that the Guam Supreme Court hung its decision on. We start out with Pickering versus Board of Education. That was a case that was decided back in the 1960s. Pickering was a teacher, and the Board of Education in a little Illinois town was trying to float a bond issue. And the Board of Education had several meetings dealing with this. Pickering wrote letters that were very critical of the Board of Education and how they were dealing with the bond issue. Pickering was a teacher. Well, the Board of Education didn't like that. He was speaking. He was being critical of the people that employed him. So guess what they did? They fired him. And when the case got to the Supreme Court said no. You know, Pickering was talking about a matter of public interest. And, you know, certainly criticizing a Board of Education on public interest, on public bonding is a matter of public interest. He wasn't saying, he wasn't writing to the newspaper and saying, I'm a math teacher, but they make me teach English. Or I don't like hot weather and they make me teach PE. It wasn't a personal grievance. It was a matter of public interest. He was even wrong on some of the facts that he criticized the board on. This came out in trial. But he was not, there was no malice. That is, he did not know that what he was saying was untrue, and he didn't speak in reckless disregard of the truth. So Pickering got his job back. The next case that came along was a case called Connick versus Myers. This one came out of Louisiana. Connick was a district attorney for Orleans Parish in Louisiana. And apparently Connick was one of these guys that expected people to come to work when they got to work, and their work must be devoted to accomplishing their mission. And a lady named Myers took offense to this. And she apparently tried to drum up as much dissatisfaction in the district attorney's office as she could. And then she went so far as to take a survey of the assistant district attorneys on the performance of Mr. Connick. And when Connick found out about it, he fired her. And of course, she relied on freedom of speech, etc. But the Supreme Court came out and said that, you know, she's not speaking about a matter of public interest. She's talking about her own personal, my caseload is too heavy, you know, I don't have good secretary, that sort of thing. So the termination stood. The final case that came down was Garcetti versus Ceballos. And in that case, once again, the Supreme Court fleshed out the rules and said that if you are not purporting to speak for a government agency, speaking on your own time, expressing yourself about a matter of public interest, you can't be fired. So that's kind of a primer on what's going on here. Now, Chotfris, you know, there's all kinds of things in the record that, you know, that there was a conversation with the chief, and the chief said, I don't want you saying anything about this because the matter is under investigation. And that's one of our rules. We don't want police officers talking about matters under investigation because you may, if you'll pardon the expression, queer the investigation. So they went kind of back and forth on that, and Chotfris says, well, I got to because I got to tell my side of the story. My side of the story. Now, remember, the story was that somebody was shooting off fireworks on the roof of a building in Agate, Bloodtown. And Chotfris showed up and started hollering at the police officers, acting in a very untoward fashion for even a rank-and-file cop, not to mention a colonel. And they of course, reported this, and it wound up that Chotfris was placed on administrative leave and an investigation was begun. She said, don't you talk about this. Chotfris went on the air with a couple of TV stations and with the Patty Arroyo show. And as a result, J.I. Cruz fired him. Insubordination. Insubordination means you didn't follow an order. It doesn't mean you spoke back, you talked back to the boss and you were snotty. That's not what it means. So they fired him for insubordination. At the Civil Service Commission, Chotfris again said, I had to have the ability to go on the media to tell my side of the story. You see where this is going, Jose? Now, conduct of police officers, and at one point they said that they didn't have probable cause to go into the house that where the fireworks were going off. You know, it is a matter of public of interest whether police officers are disobeying Fourth Amendment rights. There are lots of things that might have been in public interest, but telling your side of the story doesn't happen to be one of them. So it was a good bust. Fired Chotfris for that. And judging from reading the Supreme Court's decision, what happened at the Civil Service Commission, Chotfris whipped out his tongue and cut his own throat with it when he came out and said, well, I had to tell my side. There were two sides of the story. So that's the First Amendment. Congress shall make no law abridging the freedom of speech is not an absolute right. And the focus here is on this fact that when the government is acting with or against a citizen, it is bound by the First Amendment. When the government is acting with or against its own employees, then the whole First Amendment doesn't apply. There's a balancing test between the right of a person to express himself and the disruptive effect that speech might have on the organization. So the government as an employer is not the same as the government out in the community with the citizens. Okay, that takes us to Ron McNinch's column in the paper today. Ron has now become sort of the poster child of First Amendment rights. But let's head for Churchill Downs, and if I can't finish this today, we'll pick it up tomorrow.
Every company needs money to grow and take on the challenges 2023 will bring.
That's why Bank Pacific's commercial loan officers stand ready to help you.
We offer several programs tailored to assist companies to get to the next step or perhaps for a startup,
including working with SBA or GITA.
Now we're banking on the future. Services to choose. Bank Pacific, where others put branches.
Bank Pacific.
We want to be your partner.
Equal opportunity lender. Member FDIC.
Credit conditions apply. Come try Guam's original Chamorro restaurant with Pica's Best 5 years running. Mezcla Chamorro Fusion Bistro. Experience Chef Peter's candied salmon over scallion coconut rice, octopus to naktak, Chamorro platter, and their award-winning gourmet hamburgers. Or if you're looking for something healthy, try their keto-friendly menu. Come and enjoy Mezcla's half-a-day service at their Hagåtña and Grand Plaza Tuman location. Call their Hagåtña location at 479-2652 for reservations.
Okay, so here we go on the home stretch now from Churchill Downs. 6 furlongs. I crossed the finish line and the race is over for today. I have Ron McNinch's column that ran in the Daily News today. Ron's a regular columnist for the Daily News ever since the Post canceled him. And here's what McNinch says today. UOG's removal from Civil Service Commission oversight was a mistake. In 1995, University of Guam and Guam Community College academic employees were removed from Civil Service Commission oversight by Public Law 2326. This was requested by GCC. UOG was added as an afterthought. The acting governor vetoed the bill, but the veto was not sustained. The legislative hearing provides good foresight on the impending chaos this reckless bill created. While the road to hell is often paved with good intentions, this ill-conceived law failed in many critical ways. The university is still struggling with its implications of the law years later. In normal administrative law, a law that radically changes an important system should contain handover or bridging steps to effect a transition. In the case of the university, critical federal law compliance systems were thrown out the window, and basic human resource systems were clear-cut in the zeal to create a fiefdom. For example, I was told in the late 90s that the University of Guam didn't have to follow the American Disabilities Act with faculty. The federal government had to compel the university in 2003 to develop basic EEO, ADA, and Title IX process for faculty and administrators. Even so, the process still does not work. Last year, I had a basic complaint that should have taken less than 45 days to process. It took over a year. They found in my favor, by the way, and nearly 7 months later, no actions have been taken. The Board of Regents is still clueless, but they should have known this. On January 17, 2023, the Regents are supposed to look at a routinely minor yet important disciplinary action against me. The university president oddly disciplined me for some emails, as I mentioned last week. This sort of routine disciplinary action should have taken place several levels below the president, well out of the Board of Regents zone. By conspicuously taking action against me, the only direct appeal later is the board. Even worse, if the board doesn't straighten this out, the flawed system used by UOG will require several faculty and administrators to review these questions. In effect, the regents will be overseen by the folks they're supposed to be overseeing. Given that I have multiple conflicts with the board, I waived all conflicts with them. I also waived confidentiality since this was blasted all over by political minions on morning talk radio. Notice he said morning talk radio.
You're the clear.
Anyone can talk about this, and I encourage anyone interested to check the FIRE. That's an acronym that he's mentioned before. The Western Association of Schools and Colleges has warned GOG about this before. Beware. Well, he does talk about his own situation here, but it's in the context of illustrating a problem with the university. So I think he's okay on what he put in his column today, that Christ won't have to write him another letter. Okay, a couple of other things came up. This is not the first time that Christ and McNish have put the gloves on. I have an old Daily News article here. Christ, law doesn't require UOG to disclose settlement. A law that requires Government of Guam settlements to be publicly disclosed doesn't apply to a 2018 court settlement with University Professor Ron McNish, according to the university. The university responded to concerns stated last week by Speaker Tina Rose Munga Barnes. Barnes wrote a letter to University President Thomas Christ stating the university failed to follow the law because it did not publicly disclose the terms of McNish's settlement. Settlement of any claims concerning the Government of Guam shall not be sealed and shall be open to public inspection, the law states. It also requires the Speaker to receive a copy of all settlements. The provisions the Speaker cited are part of the Government's Claims Act, which has been on the books since 1956 and which was revised in 1983. It outlines process for filing claims against GovGuam agencies, such as damage caused by motor vehicles. The Government of Claims Act does not apply to McNish's lawsuit for the simple reason that his suit did not result from a government claim, Christ wrote in a letter Wednesday to the Speaker. He said McNish's case is a federal civil rights suit alleging workplace retaliation. Okay, let me stop there, and I have the statute that he's referring to, and this is Chapter 18, 1 GCA Chapter 18, statutes applicable to the entire government of Guam. 1800 is a requirement of approval of legislature for privatization. Article 2, approval of settlements. 1820, no office, department, instrumentality, agency, institution, on and on and on and on, right, of the territorial government, etc., may enter into any consent decree, stipulated order, or other settlement agreement with any party seeking a claim against the government of Guam that requires the payment of cash financing or future financing by the government of Guam without the approval of the legislature or a specific appropriation for that claim. Any proposed settlement that requires legislative appropriation or authorization by an office, department, instrumentality, agency, institution, board, bureau, commission, council, authority, or branch purporting a consent decree, stipulated order, or other settlement with the government of Guam shall be transmitted to the legislature, which by statute may amend, approve, or disapprove the plan taken within 45 days, or said plan of action shall be deemed disapproved. This section shall not apply to claims against the government arising from the provisions of the Claims Act, the actions authorized by public law of the Civil Service Commission, or other settlements expressly authorized by public law. No settlement in legal proceedings or threatened legal proceedings concerning the government of Guam shall be sealed from public view. Well, just my horseback opinion here, it doesn't seem to me that Christ is on very firm footing, because this is not the Claims Act. This is a general statute. Now, Christ does have an argument that you probably never thought of, and that is that the statute goes to claims against the government of Guam. And you've learned from listening to Tall Tales that you cannot sue a government agency except under the Claims Act. The way you get around it is you sue government officials. So McNinch must have sued the president at the time. Now, whether the statute that I just read goes to that, because it's kind of a legal fiction when you sue a public official in his official capacity that you're not actually suing the government. But that's the way it works. So McNinch has been awfully quiet about that. And one would think that if McNinch is on firm footing, he would just say, I'm reading that settlement agreement. Here it is. Okay, going back to McNinch's column. Even so, the process still doesn't work. Last year I had a basic complaint that should have taken less than 45 days to process. It took over a year. They found in my favor, by the way, nearly 7 months later, no actions have been taken. The Board of Regents is still clueless, but they should have known this. Oh, wait a minute. On January 17, the Regents are supposed to look at a routinely minor yet important disciplinary action against me. It's either minor or it's important. I think it can be both at the same time. The university president oddly disciplined me for some emails, as I mentioned last week. Now, this is kind of getting into personal stuff, isn't it? This sort of routine disciplinary action should have been taken several levels below the president, well out of the Board of Regents zone, by conspicuously taking action against me. The only direct appeal there is the board. Even worse, if the board doesn't straighten this out, the flawed system by UOG will require several faculty and administrators to review these questions. And then he talks about his conflicts, etc. I'm going to read something else here, too. Oh, yeah, on McNinch's lawsuit. McNinch in August asked the federal court to unseal the details of the settlement, but Judge Alex Munson last month denied that request, stating that the court isn't authorized to modify or rewrite the terms of a settlement, and the settlement has a confidentiality provision in it. Both McNinch and his lawyer expressly agreed in writing that the settlement terms should be confidential and under seal, Christ wrote. It is therefore difficult to understand how Dr. McNinch can now plausibly maintain that the settlement needs to be unsealed and made public. I've got to...
You got any Biden blunders today?
I got a Biden blunder right here. Biden horrified an international audience when he explicitly demanded the overthrow of Vladimir Putin during a speech denouncing the Russian invasion of Ukraine. Quote, "For God's sakes, this man cannot remain in power." The president thundered outside the bunting-draped royal castle in Warsaw, Poland, at the end of a 3-day visit. Within minutes, the White House rushed to say that Biden didn't really mean it. He was not discussing Putin's power in Russia or regime change, an unnamed aide said. It was the second time in 2 days that the White House was forced to contradict the president for fear that his comments could spark Russian retaliation. For God's sakes, this man cannot remain in power. I would say the same thing, but I wouldn't direct it at Putin, right? Okay, are we there yet, Jose?
Probably about 30 seconds.
So it's time for me to hold this sign up here. Where's my camera? There we go, Jose. Yeah. I got to wait for the music, I guess. There we go. All right, let's go, Brandon.
Is KUSG, Hagåtña, Guam, 93.3 FM and 104.3 HD3.
The funeral for a former pope. I'm Jack Callahan, Fox News. It hasn't happened in hundreds of years. As Pope Benedict was the first to resign the office in a millennium, Pope Francis is about to preside over his predecessor's funeral.
On this grey and misty morning, tens of thousands of people are filing into St. Peter's Square. Many nuns and priests arrived well before dawn. As per the wishes of Benedict XVI, the scale of the event is less than it would be were he a serving pope. But many of the papal traditions continue. One novel aspect, a pope presiding over the funeral of a pope emeritus for the very first time. Francis will conduct the Mass before Benedict's body is taken inside the Basilica for a private burial.
Fox's Jonathan Savage at the Vatican. In Washington, talks between Kevin McCarthy and some of the Republicans blocking his election to Speaker of the House.
I wouldn't say there was a breakthrough, but I would say good faith people are
trying to get to yes.
That's South Dakota Republican Dusty Johnson, who is a McCarthy ally. As many as 20 of the Republicans have been demanding committee assignments and rules changes. At least two of the opponents, Florida's Matt Gaetz and Colorado's Lauren Boebert, tell Fox News they'll never vote for McCarthy. A seventh ballot is scheduled as the House reconvenes at noon. Brian Koberger is back in Idaho. The man suspected of slashing 4 university students to death in November, flown back to the state last night. Turns out his cross-country drive to his parents' home in Pennsylvania was tracked by the FBI.
A law enforcement source tells me there was surveillance of Koberger at least 2 weeks before he was arrested. I'm told the 2 traffic stops made by Indiana police December 15th were directed by an FBI surveillance team that was tracking him all the way from Washington State. They were still building their case and wanted video images of Koberger's hands.
Fox's Dan Springer. Koberger is likely to have his first Idaho court appearance today. America is listening to Fox News.